Welcome back to Stormi Talks True Crime on my Girls Rock Productions channel, where I talk about some of the most heinous crimes in history. Remember to like and subscribe to my channel for more of my content, and hit the bell to make sure you are notified every time I post. In this week's episode, we're going to talk about another serial killer. This is a guy who is said to believe to have been inspired by Henry Landru, who I talked about in last month in an earlier video. I will put a link to the video in the comments and description box below. This killer is known as John High, or better known as the Acid Bath Killer. Now, for the more graphic content on the story, check out my Stormi Talks True Crime, The Aftermath on my Patreon. There is a link in the comments and the description box below. Now, let's get on with the story. John High was born in Stamford, Lincolnshire on July 4th, 1909, making him on the Leo side of the Cancer-Leo cusp. And he was raised in the village of Outwood, West Riding of Yorkshire. High's parents were an engineer and his wife, John Robert High, and Emily. They were members of the Plymouth Brethren, which is a conservative Protestant group. His parents were married late in life, so he was their only child. He would later claim that he suffered from religious nightmares throughout his youth. He would develop great proficiency at the piano, which he would learn at home. He was fond of classical music and often attended concerts. He would win a scholarship to the Queen Elizabeth Grammar School in Wakefield, and then to Wakefield Cathedral, where he would become a choir boy. After school, High would go on to become an apprentice to a firm of motor engineers. He would leave that job after a year and take a job in insurance and advertising. Then, at 21, he would be fired after stealing from the cash box. After this termination, he would move on to forging car documents. On July 6, 1934, just before his 25th birthday, High would marry 23-year-old Beatrice Betty Hamer. The marriage soon dissolved, however, because later that year, John would be arrested for fraud. Betty would give birth to a baby girl while he was in prison. She would give that baby up for adoption and leave High. His family would also disown him after this incident. He would move to London in 1936 and became chauffeur to William McSwan, who was a wealthy owner of amusement arcades. High would also maintain the arcade machines. Thereafter, he pretended to be a solicitor named William Cato Adamson, with offices in Chancery Lane, London, Guildford, Surrey, and Hastings, Sussex. While doing this, he would sell fraudulent stock shares said to be from the estates of his deceased clients at below market rates. His scam was uncovered by someone who noticed he had misspelt Guildford as Guildford without the D on his letterhead. High received a 4-year prison sentence. High would be released just after the start of World War II, and he would continue to be a fraudster and was sentenced to several more prison terms. He soon had the same idea as Henri Landru: no body, no crime. He also took some notes from another French killer, Georges-Alexandre Seurat, who would dispose of his victims in sulfuric acid. After examining with field mice, he would find that it would take the body about 30 minutes to completely dissolve. In 1943, High was freed from prison and became an accountant with an engineering firm. Soon after, he would actually encounter his former employer, William McSwan, in a Kensington pub. McSwan would introduce High to his parents, Donald and Amy. McSwan worked for them by collecting rent for their properties. High would become envious of his lifestyle. On September 6, 1944, McSwan would just disappear. When William's parents started to ask about him, High would state that he had gone up to Scotland to go into hiding to avoid being called up for military service. During this time, John would move into William's house and collect the rent for his parents. As the war started to come to an end, McSwan's parents started to question why he hadn't returned. On July 2nd, 1945, High would lure them into Gloucester Road by telling them that their son would meet them in a secret visit from Scotland. He unalived both of them with blows to the head and disposed of the bodies. High would then steal the McSwan's pension checks and sold his parents' properties for around £8,000. This is when he would move into the Onslow Court Hotel in Kensington. He found another couple to victimize, Archibald Henderson and his wife, Rose. Rose had been married to German inventor Rudolf Aron in a previous marriage. After pretending to be interested in buying a house they were selling, he was invited back to the Hendersons' house to play piano for their housewarming party. While he was there, he would steal Archibald's revolver, planning on using it in his next crime. John would then rent a small workshop on 2 Leopold Road in Crawley, West Sussex. He would then move all the acid and drums to this new workshop from Gloucester Road. On February 12, 1948, he drove Archibald Henderson to his workshop with the lie that he was going to show him an invention. Upon arrival, John would pew Archibald in the back of the head with his own revolver. John would then lure Rose into the workshop by claiming that her husband had fallen ill, when he would pew her as well. After disposing of the Hendersons' bodies in the oil drums full of acid, High would forge a letter with their signatures and sold all their possessions for £8,000, except for their car and dog, which he would keep for himself. High would then go on to meet his final victim that we know of, 69-year-old widow Olive Durand Deacon. Her late husband, John Durand Deacon, was a wealthy solicitor and a fellow resident of the Onslow Court Hotel. By this time, High was actually claiming to be an engineer, and he had overheard Olive's conversation with a friend talking about an idea for artificial fingernails. He would invite her down to his workshop on Leopold Road on February 18, 1949. Once they were inside the building, High pewed her in the neck with the .38 caliber Webley that he had stolen. Then he stripped her of her valuables, including a Persian lamb coat, and put her body inside the acid bath. 2 days later, Olive's friend Constance Lane would report her missing, and this would be the start of John High's downfall. The detectives soon discovered High's record of theft and fraud and searched the workshop. Police would find a case containing a dry cleaner's receipt for Olive Durand Deacon's coat, and also the papers referring to the Hendersons and the McSwans. During his interrogation, High asked Detective Inspector Albert Webb, "Tell me, frankly, what are the chances of anybody being released from Broadmoor?" Which, for those of you who don't know, this is a high-security psychiatric hospital in the UK. When the inspector told him that he couldn't discuss those things, High replied, "Well, if I told you the truth, you would not believe me. It sounds too fantastic to believe." High would go on to confess to killing the McSwans, the Hendersons, and Olive Durand Deacon. He also admitted to killing 3 other people, a young man named Max, a girl from Eastbourne, and a woman from Hammersmith. These claims, however, could not be substantiated. High would plead insanity, claiming he would drink his victims' blood. He said that he had had dreams dominated by blood as a young boy. When he was involved in a car accident in March of 1944, his dream returned to him. The AG, Sir Hartley Shawcross, led the prosecution and urged the jury to reject High's defense of insanity because he had acted with malice and forethought. Sir David Maxwell Fyfe, High's defense, called many witnesses to attest to his mental state. Just like Landreau, High had mistakenly believed that if the bodies of his victims could not be found, a murder conviction would not be possible. It took only minutes for the jury to find him guilty. Justice Humphrey sentenced him to death, and on August 10, 1949, High was hanged by executioner Albert Pierpoint. Evidence from High's trial is on display in the Crime Museum at New Scotland Yard. Well, that concludes this week's episode of Stormi Talks True Crime. Feel free to leave comments on this story below or suggestions of other stories you may like to see. Don't forget to check out some of my other playlists while you are here. On Stormi Teaches Music, I release a cover video on Mondays at 6 p.m. Eastern and a video of me teaching the song covered on Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Eastern. You can catch the live stream of the lesson on Wednesdays at 9 a.m. Eastern on my Patreon. On the Stormi Does Arts playlist, I have some partial videos of the live stream you can get on my Patreon for the gold tier or higher. These streams are daily at 11 a.m. Eastern. There is a link to my Patreon in the description box below. Finally, check out Stormi Tells Ghost Stories, where I talk about haunted cities around the world. These videos are posted Tuesdays at 6 p.m. Eastern. For anyone who wants to make a one-time donation to the channel to help keep it running while I'm building my audience, there is a QR code to my Venmo and CashApp on the screen. There's also a link to both in the description box and comments below. Be sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons on your way out, and I'll see you next Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern. Till then, stay safe and have a great week.